Hi, welcome to Relax and Chat. This is episode 31. Today we have the amazing Mariah Southworth. Now, I did a little browsing around on Amazon and I found that she has written a whole bunch of, believe it or not, children's stories. And I absolutely love the cover of this one. I just thought it was so cool. And so I also found that Mariah has been featured in a whole bunch of anthologies, and including It's Dark in Their Minds, the RDG Books Horror Anthology, Volume 1. Now, I wanted to say that her story in the anthology, Claudia, I wanted so much to say that it was one of the spookiest stories in the whole anthology. But I've got to be honest with you, it's one of the spookiest stories that I have ever read anywhere. It's amazing. Edge of your seat, turning the pages. You couldn't look away if your home was on fire. You'd have to finish the story first. It's that good. So, audience, it is my great pleasure to introduce Mariah Southworth. How you doing, Mariah?
Hello, Rod and the internet. I'm doing delightful, especially after you said all those nice things about me. Thank
Oh, every word is true. Every word. I'm utterly impressed. Utterly
you
impressed.
so much.
I have got to ask you, what inspired that amazing story?
Well, so a few years ago, I was working in an office, and my coworkers and I were having a conversation about rainbow babies, which is a child that a couple has after losing their first pregnancy, which is a sad, serious topic, and my heart goes out to those families
Yeah.
so much. Of course, during that conversation, someone shared a story that they knew of a couple who still celebrated the birthday of the child that they had lost. And somehow that very sweet, poignant act translated to horror in my mind. And I produced a story where the celebration is the only thing keeping an undead horror from seeking revenge.
I freaking loved it. You know, you start out with this little boy that seems to have a little bit of an attitude problem, but
Well, what little boy doesn't?
yeah, and the more you get into the story, though, I don't want to give it away because oh my, it's a real treat that the readers are going to love. But it really gets like Freddy Krueger, uh, Hellbound Heart. I don't know. It just goes there, and
I'm very fond of my visceral descriptions.
I love it. I love it. Oh, that story was so much fun to read, and what it's true that sometimes such a serious and solemn thing can inspire fiction that can be so rich in detail and so moving. And even the way the story ends, you got, you're still having goosebumps and all of that, but you get sort of I don't know if the melancholy is the right word, but that story goes with you when you put the book down and walk into the next room. That story's still with you. And that takes a lot of writing talent.
Thank
And
you.
wow, you did
Well,
so.
I think one of the main things that fiction does is that it allows us to look at these scary and upsetting things in a safe space.
Uh-huh.
Like, no one wants to lose a child. That's horrible. No one wants to go through life with the ghost of a dead sibling hanging over their head.
Yeah.
But being able to face that and even exaggerate it to a cathartic level is so important for human psyche. And I think that those are really the stories that end up staying with you, is the ones that address this primal fear.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my big reason for loving horror in the first place is it moves you emotionally like nothing else, you know.
Yes.
And it's awesome. Now I've got to ask you because I mean I always do a little bit of a background on the guests I'm going to have, try to get to know them a little bit. And I saw all those wonderful little children's stories, and I saw the other anthologies. Very impressive, lots of work. But I was thinking, how in the world do you transition from this cute little adorable child story that a mama could very easily read to her baby to this horrifying, scary short story that's in it's stuck in their minds. Oh my God, Claudia is so scary. How do you make that transition?
It's not really, I mean, when you look at the two separate things, it does seem like there's a hard stop between them, but it's more of a spectrum. Children like scary stories. They do. I work in education, and a lot of the times when I have downtime, I have children coming to me and say, "Story time, tell me a story, tell me a story." I have a lot of just memorized stories that I made up that have not gotten into books yet. I would love the opportunity to turn them into children's books.
Uh-huh.
And I might someday when I have time to do it, because the books that you've seen are self-published and they're great and I love them. I need a little bit more meat to get into the more stuff that I do. But the point is, a lot of the times they ask for the scary stories, and I have to be careful. One time I did actually have to be talked to because I scared someone too much. But what am I trying to say? A story is always going to have the same elements. Whether you're cute and sweet and take in the aspects that children are focused on, or you bring all those elements and add in the things that adults need to get them excited, it's all the same. It's just, it's cake. It just depends on if you're adding vanilla or cinnamon, you know?
Well, I got to be honest. A 6-year-old child should never, ever, ever read or be read Claudia.
No, no,
Because
they shouldn't.
Claudia will frighten a 17-year-old. And I mean that as a compliment. It's a fabulous horror story. It's awesome. I hope that I'll see a lot more of your work. It's amazing. And I know what you mean about the little short stories. You know, I know another author, a couple other authors that do these little, I don't know, 12 to 20 page little stories as ebooks on Amazon, and they do quite well. But you can't print a paperback unless it's at least 40 pages. I learned that with my first book.
You can't, yeah, and you can't do color unless it's 70 pages.
Really?
Yeah, you can't. Like, I'm not sure which children's story you popped up there. There's a couple, but there's Lydia No Lying, which is short, and I did the full watercolor for, and you can get the full color if it's an ebook, but the print version is black and white. Yeah. Which is why for the IMA animal series, I ended up taking a bunch of different animals and putting them in a collection so I could get the full color. Yeah. And of course, the 24 scary poems for scary children is meant to be black and white. So those are my children's books that I have up, and I had to think about all of that during the printing process because it's limited when you're indie.
Oh yeah, a lot of authors don't realize. I publish novellas for authors, and the size of the book and the content, the front matter, the back matter, all of that matters, because in the end, especially with a novella and desperately with a novel, you want to make sure that it looks nice sitting on the shelf. And if the book is real, 8 by 10, it's going to be very skinny. Or if the content's not quite there, it's going to be very skinny, and you don't have a spine. You just got a blank spine. And when you put it on the bookshelf, yeah, it's there. But I always encourage the writers to put enough in your book. And of course, when I format the book, I always try to make sure the size allows for the title and the author's name, and my company's logo is on the spine. So when it's sitting on the bookshelf, it looks pretty awesome, And yeah, I mean, you've got like a dual career going on, because you certainly have the talent to be a horror writer, big time. Don't stop. Oh, you have the ability to really go somewhere with that.
Maybe, I could never stop.
Maybe consider at some point working on a novella or a novel horror story. my press will publish it. Oh yeah.
I will have to hit you up on that because I am sitting on a couple of novels and novellas that I've been trying to pepper out there. So yeah, we'll
At the
talk.
same time, the children's market is a very thriving market that, every parent wants to be able to read to their child, and every good parent wants their child to take an interest in reading. You know, these video games, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit older, but they've gotten out of hand. Adults spend 6 hours of their day playing a game, get up, and what did you accomplish in those 6 hours? It gets a little bit silly, and it's getting to the point, and now AI is invading everything, and we're going to forget how to think. And we don't want our children to never learn how to think in the first place. They need to read those children's stories.
As someone who is where I do my day job is in the education field, and we're facing a horrible scenario where you get kids in like third grade who can't read. Literacy is definitely a big concern and a big struggle. And a lot of it is you have to read to your child when they are small. They care about what you care about. And just seeing that these shapes on a page can become sounds is a big stepping stone, and people don't realize that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that.
Yeah, because you're covering two bases. You're making sure that all of us now have freaking awesome, scary stories. And you're looking after the children and the future of all the writers, well beyond my time. So
I would love to, I would love to be able to write and illustrate and publish some of those exotic stories that I got in my head that they're always telling me they need to listen to again, but we'll see how it goes.
So I'm curious. Every writer has their own journey, their own strengths, and their own weaknesses. How do you feel about short stories in general? 5,000 words, even 500 words. It does make a difference because compared to a novel, because you've got to get the plot, you've got to get the characters, you've got to get the pacing, and you've got to get it all done in that short time. Every word counts. Do you find that to be like high pressure and stressful, or do you find writing a short story to be just a blast and a lot of fun?
I find I do both. I do novels and short stories. The novels haven't seen the light of day yet, but it's a journey. They both have their own unique challenges. I actually enjoy the freedom of the short story. I find that the shorter format allows me to get more experimental. And I mean, a novel can take years to perfect. And somehow I found that my short story writing and my novel writing improve each other. Like you're right, you gotta be like that with characterization in a short story. And you still want that in a novel. You don't want to spend 10 pages describing how Samantha does all of this. You want to show that immediately, both in a short story and a novel. And because of the short stories format, it forces you to do that. So any aspiring authors or even established authors who are struggling with that, just go and write short stories. You only have a paragraph to make the reader be invested in this character, and this is the way to really put yourself under fire and get it done.
Yeah, I really do. I agree with you. I recommend to writers, if you're a novelist, give short stories a try because they're a lot of fun. And if you write short stories, which I've published entirely short stories. I'm working on a novel. I've actually had two that I've been working on. And but those short stories, they teach you a lot because like you said, in your novel, you don't want to spend 5 pages, especially out of the first 10, describing the jacket that Tom is wearing or the skirt that Sue is wearing. We don't need that much detail about a jacket or a skirt, and in a short story, you're lucky if you can say Tom's wearing a jacket. Because will that be wasted words? I don't know. Let's see how the story goes.
I always say, and I've been to a couple of writers' workshops where they agree, if it's there, it needs to move the story along. Yeah, Tom's wearing a jacket. Why? So that the opening scene can be somebody tugging him by it, or so that he can be sewing patches on it because he's insecure about his own self, so he has to express himself through the patches on his jacket. If the jacket isn't important, don't bother.
Exactly. Yeah, I run into that. I of course, I have a publishing house. I'm also a full service editor, and I run into it a lot, even in novellas. Like you just said, an author will put an awful lot of detail into a particular thing that throughout the whole rest of the book, it doesn't come up at all again. It doesn't matter. If this guy's got a black eye because he just got hit, but that doesn't mean a thing in the rest of the story. You don't really need the black eye. What good is it doing? You know, and if you're going to put it there, don't dwell on it. It's like naming characters that are nowhere else. You walk into a restaurant one time in the story, you meet Mary Jane Phillips, whatever, but you stick that name in the reader's mind, and then you walk out of the restaurant, we never hear another word about it. The waitress,
I see large like media movies make that mistake.
Yeah.
And it always makes me hate the entire movie when that happens.
Yeah. It's enough to say the waitress came over and poured me a cup of coffee. That's it. Move on. Now the reader knows the waitress was there, but the reader kind of picks up. Readers are not stupid. They pick up, yeah, it's just a waitress. That's nice. But if you actually name the character, and especially if you describe that character, make sure that character's in your story, because otherwise you're misleading the reader, and they get kind of, even I get a little bit like, why'd you bring that up if you wasn't going to go anywhere with it?
I mean, the only exception to that would be if your main POV character is a Sherlockian paranoid maniac who puts everyone in high detail.
Yeah. You really got to be true to your characters. You're right. Sherlock Holmes is a perfect example of that. The way the man thought and the details that he saw always played into the storyline, and yeah, you're absolutely right. There are exceptions to every rule. I don't believe in any hard, firm rules. I do think that sometimes there's writers who are, bouncing along, breaking every rule, feeling very proud of themselves, what rebels they are. They're breaking every rule. They don't know the rules in the first place, and they're creating garbage, and it's a shame, especially in the indie writing. A lot of the traditional publishers won't let that slide, but it's really bad in indie writing. And that stinks, because I know a lot of indie writers who are just amazing writers, who care about their craft, who hire an editor or they know an editor. Their stories are clean. There ain't no typos in there. Their plot lines are solid. There's no holes. These indie writers today, the ones that care about their craft and stay the heck away from the Tin Man AI, the ones who really write, by golly, they can compete with any traditional writer. I've got writers in my company, writers that have done this anthology, that have the skill and the talent to stand beside any famous writer you can name. These are people who can write. Yes, you're one of them. Absolutely. I'm not kidding. I'd love to see any work you produce in the horror realm. I'll certainly give it a look and be willing to publish it, because it's great. That story indicated clearly that you know what you're doing, and you're very creative and very, very skilled. And I'm not kidding. It's a joy to read that story, because I actually got some goosebumps, and I love when that happens.
That feels so good to hear. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the publishing industry, is that sometimes publishers will not take something, not because it's not good, but because they don't think they could sell it. And honestly, I've been sitting on Claudia for a couple of years, and I'm pretty sure the dead baby put some publishers off. And I'm really glad that it didn't put you off.
Oh, let me tell you the truth. I'm just some guy in Kentucky, but I grew up a street kid. I've seen about everything. I spent almost my entire childhood in and out of Shriners Burns Institute. I'm only burnt on my face and my hands, nowhere else. But it was enough that I had to be in there. And I've seen, Clive Barker can't even guess things I've seen firsthand, and I'm not trying to put him down, but I've actually seen body horror. So it doesn't bother me at all. And out in the streets as a kid growing up, I got picked on a lot. And as I got older, I learned how to defend myself. So I've seen both sides of the violence out there in the street. So to be honest, nothing offends me. Nothing puts me off. you know. I think if there's any one thing that really gets on my nerves, it's arrogance. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
You know, and people should be good to each other, you know. It's long overdue that we all realize there's only one race, the human race. We're all in this game together. We need to learn to work together. And I may edit this stuff out. sometimes I chatter so much. I don't mean to. It's just that, well, it's so much fun to sit and talk with someone like you. We could do this for 3 or 4 hours and I would just have a blast.
It's hard for that not to be on everybody's mind right now. And especially writers need to, a good friend of mine, who I write with, Diana Botsford, always says that you need to hold the torch and like light the way. And doing our writing, even if we're not talking politically overtly, even if we're just having the representation and showing that people can be better and that bad things do happen to people who are evil, even just holding that hope up makes a huge difference. And I know that one of the reasons I wanted to become a writer was because during my childhood, I went into escapism so much in books. And I want to be able to add to that rich tapestry of escapism for the kids who need it so that they can learn these better things that they're not necessarily getting in their day-to-day lives, so that they can grow and be the people who my characters would be proud of.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you, don't want to run out of time too quickly, but it's really fascinating to me, and I'm sure the audience would like to know, what kind of works in progress do you have going on at the moment?
Okay, I have a really bad habit of bouncing between works in progress. I was going to tell you about the sci-fi novel that I'm working on, about sorry, brain glitching. I was going to tell you about this sci-fi novel that I was working on about a cyborg engineer, her robot, and her alien pilot trying to navigate through the future of intergalactic politics and bigotry and conspiracies. But in truth, I haven't touched that for like a month. And now I'm like starting on, I went to go do a tour of the Oregon caves, and now I'm starting on this fantasy story with these goblins who live in a cave and have this whole culture and world building around the stuff that I learned in the cave, and teaming up with a human who have to go and dismantle a utopia with a dark secret. So those are my novels. And short stories, I'm actually dipping back into historical fiction because I have recently started writing short stories for a series called Heritage, about rewriting history so that it goes better for female figures in history. So I'm just starting on rewriting Bessie Coleman's story so that she doesn't die in that horrible airplane crash and does get to open her aviation school. Previously in that series, I did Julie d'Aubigny, the French opera singer, and Wu Zetian, the Chinese empress. And the Julie d'Aubigny story is already out. Yes, it is out this month. I just haven't gotten my copy yet.
So I want to ask, because I'm sure the audience will, I will put a bunch of links down in the description of the YouTube video, but this goes out to all the platforms that I reach, and some of them can't see the descriptions. So if you would, maybe let us know your website or social media where they could reach out to you and say hi and get to know you better.
Of course. So my website is mariahsouthworth.com. Super easy. And I post, among other things, a list of all the anthologies that I have out with links to where you can purchase them. So that's the best place to just see all my stuff in one collection. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm going to have to look up my handle for you. So on Instagram, I am at mariah.southworth. And then Facebook, Mariah Southworth. There's a picture of me holding a cat.
Well, we got to wrap it up. We're running out of time, but oh, what a pleasure to chat with you. So wonderful. And RDG Books Press publishes horror, fantasy, and thrillers. We've got a fantasy submission call open right now. And if you think this is an invitation, it is.
Oh, exciting. I will look it up. It's on your website, right?
Yes.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
real quickly to the audience, Mariah Southworth. Can you believe I got her on the show? Claudia, if you like a good, scary story, you got to grab It's Dark in Their Minds. Those stories are fantastic, and Claudia is one of the best. It's awesome. So as much as I hate to do it, I've got to bring Relax and Chat episode 31. Got to bring it to an end, but I'll be back. And I hope you will too. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Mariah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. Well, y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.